I can't go back to you, my friend. Don't even ask, don't play pretend.
John, I am leaving on a business trip tomorrow. Sonya carefully skewered a potato on her fork and sent it into her mouth. Again? Frowned the man. You've just returned not long ago. Well, John, I am a good specialist, and it's not my fault that I'm constantly being sent somewhere. John didn't argue with that. He knew his wife worked hard and efficiently. And how long will you be gone? For 3 days, the girl replied without hesitation, and we can go somewhere together on the weekend. All right. John knew he didn't have a choice. Where do you want to go? To an exhibition at the gallery. It recently opened. Got it. I'll buy the tickets. Thank you. Sophia charmingly smiled at her husband. She quickly finished dinner, washed the dishes, and glanced at John. He, tired after a day's work, was dozing on the couch in front of the TV. The girl shook her head and settled in the kitchen with her phone. She didn't call from home, but she often exchanged messages. Hi, David. I'll come to you tomorrow. Hi, darling. Won't your husband suspect anything? I told him I'm going on a business trip. He shouldn't suspect anything. John is naive and trusts me. Then until tomorrow, my love. Sophia dreamily looked out the window and smiled. She met David 6 months ago and slept with him on the first night of their acquaintance. The charming tall guy with dimples on his cheeks and blue eyes immediately captured her heart. Slim and cheerful Sonya, with the attentive gaze of brown eyes, also liked the guy. They collided on the street, and the girl spilled coffee on him. She expected an explosion of anger. But instead, the guy laughed and said he didn't like that outfit anyway. That's how they met. And the next morning, Sophia realized she was in love. She didn't know what to do with her husband, whom she also loved, but in her own way. John was a shield and support on difficult days, and Sonya appreciated him. But she felt she had outgrown their relationship. John was older by several years and didn't particularly like any novelties. He preferred lounging on the couch and cuddling, rather than going to exhibitions. Yes, he was educated and could engage in conversation on almost any topic, but he wasn't interested in it. David was completely different. With him, Sonya felt alive. Recently, John had almost stopped giving her flowers, while David showered her with compliments and gifts. John fell asleep after work, sometimes still on the couch, while David could talk to her for hours lying in bed. John didn't particularly like cultural events, while David bought tickets for all the latest releases. The only thing that stopped Sonya from telling everything to her husband was the understanding that then there would be no turning back. John loved her, but he had his limit. He wouldn't forgive betrayal, and Sophia wasn't sure she wanted to part with him. They had a lot of things connecting them, and common sense stopped her from taking such a step. The next evening, John came to an empty apartment. He didn't like it when his wife went on business trips, although lately it was beneficial to John. He stayed at work longer to earn more and intended to give Sonya a new car for her birthday. She had long wanted one, but today, of all days, he was let go earlier. There was some kind of holiday at the office, and everyone was dismissed. John lay on the couch for a while, then walked around the apartment, and he became thoroughly bored. "Hi, Leo," he called his friend. "Don't you want to go to a bar?" "Sorry, I promised my wife to spend the evening with the kids. Another time?" "Okay, we'll catch up later." John put away his phone and approached the window. It was just beginning to darken, and John realized he terribly wanted to eat, but he was too lazy to cook. He changed his clothes and left the house. Not far from their apartment was a nice restaurant that Sonya liked to visit. That's where the man headed. He ate slowly, watching the news on his phone, and was about to leave when he heard a familiar laugh. John knew his wife's laugh well and now turned to the sound with surprise. But Sonya wasn't in town. The thought flashed through his mind. She's coming back in 3 days. But his eyes didn't deceive him. 3 tables away, Sophia sat with her back to him, and across from her was a handsome guy. He was telling something lively, gesturing wildly, and Sonya was laughing heartily. John got up, as if in a daze, and strode to their table. He really wanted to be mistaken. He hoped this girl wasn't his wife. But somewhere deep down, the man understood it was Sophia. "What do you want?" The guy glanced at the approaching man. Sonya looked up and froze in surprise. She didn't expect to see her husband here. From surprise and some fear, the girl flared up and went on the defensive. "What are you doing here?" John shook his head. "Sonya, what's going on? What about your business trip? Who's this?" "Hey, dude, you better leave." The guy stood up, clenching his fists. He didn't like the tone John was speaking in. "David, don't interfere." Sonya scolded him. "This is my husband." David stared in astonishment at the grim and quite strong man, and the girl stood up from the table and tried to take John's hand. "Let's go talk somewhere quiet." John didn't even move, just looked her in the eyes. "Sonya, who is this?" He knew the answer, but needed to hear it. "Sorry, man." David decided it was time to join the conversation. "We love each other." "And for how long?" 6 months, David calmly said. "Sonya is mine now." Sophia herself turned pale and shifted her bewildered gaze from one man to the other. "Is it true?" John tried to remain calm, although inside him a whole volcano of emotions was boiling. "I'm sorry." Tears streamed down Sonya's cheeks. She hadn't imagined it like this at all, and it hurt to see disgust and sadness in her husband's eyes. "Leave," David intervened again. John couldn't bear it and struck him. In a matter of seconds, both were rolling on the floor, alarming other patrons. Only the rushing security managed to separate and calm them down. Sonya stood there, crying, unsure of what to do next. John left without looking back. He no longer wished to see his wife. Meanwhile, Sophia wiped the blood from David's lips and gazed into his eyes. "Why did you do that to him?" she asked. "But he's gone now." David smirked proudly. He was glad to finally be rid of his girlfriend's husband. It was something he had long wanted to do. Sophia sighed sadly. It felt as if a part of her had disappeared after her husband's departure, but she didn't want to dwell on it now. David lovingly looked at her and said something. Sonya nodded along, but she was thinking about John. He was probably on his way home now, to an empty apartment. How many times had he returned home alone, while she enjoyed David's company? "Hey, you're not listening to me at all." David gently tugged at her hand. "Let's go home. You'll feel better there." Sonya nodded. She needed to distract herself from thoughts of her husband. It was time to start a new life, where there was no place for John. For several days, Sophia truly forgot about John. She was content with David, who knew exactly what she needed and when. Seizing the opportunity while John was at work, she went to collect her belongings, leaving him a note of apology. John didn't even bother reading it. He was hurt by her betrayal and deceit. He filed for divorce and immersed himself in work to distract himself from thoughts of his wife. He tried to meet other women, but quickly realized that he was drawn only to Sonya. But she wasn't there. Sophia continued going to work while David often stayed at home. When Sonya asked him about work, he usually claimed to be working remotely or talked about some project, and she nodded understandingly. Although David increasingly found himself short of money, and by the end of the month, Sonya didn't even notice that she was paying for everything, including the rent. Everything would have continued like this. But one day, Sophia returned home slightly earlier from work and quietly entered the apartment. She was tired, and her mood was rather low. She hoped that coming home, hugging David, would make things better. She walked through the corridor and heard the voice of her boyfriend. He was talking to someone on the phone. Yes, my wallet will come from work soon. I need to live somehow. He laughed and added, Yeah, it worked out really well with her husband. He even saw us. I was about to get caught. Sophia brought her hand to her mouth in horror. She couldn't believe her ears. She's a pretty girl, of course, but I don't love her. I just need some time to live with her and not work so I won't get drafted. Yeah, they're already looking for me. Sophia slowly entered the room, and David's expression changed. Fear and anger appeared on his face. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, and then looked at her with a somewhat ingratiating smile. I wasn't expecting you. I figured. To Sophia's surprise, her voice sounded calm. Sonya, if you heard something I can explain. What, for example, that you don't love me? Sonya saw the panic in his eyes as he concocted another lie. Suddenly, she saw him clearly, a brazen, lying coward. He hid behind her back to avoid military service. I love you. I was talking to my mom on the phone. I lied to her so she wouldn't come meet you. You don't know her. She would have torn you apart. Let her think we're just living together. Sonya nodded as she listened to him, realizing that she had destroyed her own happiness. John, he was the one who truly loved her, not this pompous deceiver. An idea sparked in Sophia's mind about what to do next. But for now, she could pretend, although she wanted to cry. All right, David, I'm very tired. Is there anything for dinner? David blinked in confusion. He was prepared for at least an angry speech or tears, but Sonya calmly asked about food. Yeah, sure, he said uncertainly. I made pasta. Great, Sophia nodded. Will you warm it up? I'll change in the meantime. David obediently headed to the kitchen while Sonya quickly went to the bedroom. She changed and found the number for the local draft board. She knew it wasn't right to seek revenge, but she didn't want to stop now. The next day, while David was calmly drinking coffee, oblivious to everything, someone rang the doorbell. Sonya, who had a day off, nodded to him. I'll get it. A minute later, there were people in uniforms in the kitchen, handing a summons to the guy. We've been looking for you for a while. Take it. Sign it. Pale. David signed everything, and as soon as the people left, he looked gloomily at Sonya. How did they find out I live here? He muttered. How should I know? The girl smirked. Maybe your mother told them. So it's you? And you plan to live off me? David clenched his fists, but Sophia measured him with a scornful look. Will you hit me? Better not try. I'm leaving you. And where will you go? David's lips curled contemptuously. To your dull and old husband? He won't take you back anyway. I didn't say such things about him. Quickly gathering her things, Sophia ignored David's sidelong glances and smirk and went to a familiar house. According to her calculations, John should also have had a day off. John had just gotten up and was making coffee when the doorbell rang. Who is it? The man grumbled, but went to the door. To his surprise, Sonya stood on the threshold with tears in her eyes. Darling, I left David. I don't know if you'll forgive me or not, but you should know that I still love you and always have. And so? John wanted to let her back in, but he carefully concealed his pain. No, I mean I want to, but I understand you won't do that. I just wanted to apologize. I'll live elsewhere. Come in. John unexpectedly nodded. Why are we talking on the doorstep? Sonya obediently walked into the hallway. Darling, I'm terribly sorry. I don't know if you'll forgive me or not, but I want to make everything right. We can't bring anything back. John sighed with regret, seeing the pain in the girl's eyes, and decided on a desperate move. I love you too. Still love you. They looked at each other, and Sonya hesitantly and quietly asked, Darling, things won't be as they were before, but maybe we could try again. John felt a lightness in his heart, What do you say we go to a cafe? Sonya continued, peering into the man's face, and when he nodded, she broke into a smile.